Okay, let's do a graphite shaft removal old school for an old club. Welcome back to the McGolf shop, and I received a hybrid, an old Callaway Big Bertha Heavenwood. Big Bertha Heavenwood. Let's see, here we go. Big Bertha Heavenwood. And we're going to take this from a girly shaft in a girly club and turn it into a manly club. Alright, what it is a 6 hybrid, and it's got a ladies graphite shaft. And I was asked to put a steel stiff shaft in it. Now, what makes this one any different than all the rest? Well, it's still a bore through. You guys have been asking for bore throughs? There's a bore through. Now this is going to be a different bore through because it has a shiny hard sole, and it's not like the other Callaways and Titleist that have that brushed satin sole. This needs to be a shiny bottom. Not very many people do this anymore. The other part is this big hairy ferrule that's right here. This is a really hard plastic ferrule, and what it was made for, you know, back in the day, Callaway really didn't believe in doing too much with the way of making a hosel. So what they were doing is things were breaking right here. And to counteract that, they put this ferrule in there, and it dressed it up a little bit, but it's much, much harder than your standard issue ferrule. And what it does, it goes from here, and it sits inside here a little bit, and it provides a level of protection for those people that would hit heavy into the heel or even a little higher and prevent it from snapping. It was a great addition, but now when you got to change it out, a little different. Now, you could just melt this, but what you run the risk is that this thing's got to get really, really hot, and then you could actually burn the paint on the top. That's not what we're about. We want to do it differently. I have a tool that not available anymore. So if you need something pulled, you might have to send it. If not, well, you can try and do that and go from there. Anyway, what I have is a milled piece of polypropylene, I guess is the best way to call it. It's a very, very hard plastic. It's very very heat resistant. And what this does is that hole is big enough to go over top of this. So when I put it on here, it goes over there. I had to take the grip off because it won't go over the grip. And then it sits in here and it'll push. And it sits in there like that and it'll just push off. Now there's many more parts to this this gizmo that I have. Got a long time ago, and I pulled plenty of shafts with it. But what it does, it just pushes right up in there like that. What you want to do is be about like that, because you want this part where here will be against the shaft puller, and then you want it kind of solid against that. So we're going to heat this whole area up, get it nice and loose. I'm going to put it in the shaft puller. I'm going to pull the head. So I'm going to move you around here so you can see what's going on, and you can see what it looks like when it's all done and what we've got to do prior to putting in the new shaft. So hold on. Okay, just like we talked about before, you want to use the butane. It's a cooler heat, more precise heat. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply it around the top, around the sides, a little bit on top of the paint, get it all nice and warm, and then we're going to pull it. Now what I'm doing is I'm keeping it about 20 seconds in each area, but I'm moving it up and down the length of the head here because the shaft goes all the way through. So you got to get the whole area nice and hot in order for the epoxy bond to break. Okay, gave it a little extra oomph on the head. Now there's really no guarantee that this is going to pull off the very first time because of the amount of heat I put on it. Always try to use the least amount of heat in order to get this thing off. That way everything stays in good condition. Sometimes I might have to do this 1 or 2 more times. But apparently in this case I didn't have to. So this is what it looks like. See how it's way big inside there? And it's very small inside there. And that's the reason why that ferrule takes up that space. So now what I've got to do is I've got to clean this area up, clean that back in here, and then get my shaft ready to go and get in it. So we'll do that here in a second. All right, pulling the head really wasn't that bad of a deal. Now the next part is finding the shaft that goes in it. Now he wanted a steel shaft, and there's not a whole lot of, this was basically a 350 tip club, right? So you can do one of 2 things. You can get an adapter and make it go from 335 and go up, but that's not the way that this particular club was made, especially with that big open area that was in here. So we're going to go from a 370 down to a 350. And like, how you do that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. First and foremost, I had to find a ferrule that fit, and I had one still in stock, the Callaway original 370 piece, and it fits just like that. So it looks just like the club before it came out. Then I had he wanted a dynamic gold shaft, well, 370. Well, that's not going to fit into there because there's a lot. The 0.02 is a lot. Well, how do we get there? How do you make it smaller? Well, if you go a few more years after this guy was made, they give you the clue. And what you do in order to make a 370 fit in a 350 is you give it some slots. All right, you take a little room out, and what it does is when it gets stuck in there, looks like that. All right, you want it sticking out some because you're going to be taking some off. At least that's the way I'm doing it. And what it does is it fits in there, and now it's a tight fit. Now you're going to take this, which is a hosel pin, and that's going to go in here, and I'm going to punch that in there. First you want to make it, rough it up with the sander, and that way the epoxy will stick. I'm going to pound it down in there, and I'm going to, after it's all installed, so I've abraded the tip, and if you see as far as I've gone in there, now the abrasion's not there. So I might go just a little bit more. We're going to glue this all up once I find the spine on it. And then when you see me tomorrow, we'll be doing the finishing of it, and that's the important part where we show you how to make this goes. So I didn't show you how to abrade the tip because it's just sanding on the side, but cutting the slot, that is a tip worth $1 million. So wait for me for tomorrow, and I'll show you how I finish this guy off. All right, it's been 24 hours. And now our club is dried, and it doesn't look very pretty yet, but that's what it looks like when you put it through there. So what I like doing is taking a saw and cutting this excess off. So we just basically, doesn't have to be very precise, it just has to be cut off. There we go. And so now we start with this. So what we're going to do is and now here's the thing that's always been the issue, is that this is kind of a chromish bottom. Unlike the satin filled bottoms that you see on like the Titleist and the other Callaways that had had grooves, more texture. This is a shiny soft. So it's got to be smooth. Well, the only way you're really going to get through this is by sanding it. And you can't help but nick the bottom of this. So there's a kind of a recovery on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sand this off with my jet, and then I'm going to buff it. And I'm going to show you this. I'm going to reposition the camera, and then we'll show you how this goes. Okay, I'm going to get my vacuum started here. It's going to be noisy, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pan all this out. Now, this was step one, and now what I got to do is take it down with a little bit finer belt that I have, and that way we don't really sand into it too much. This is a 1200 grit sanding belt. Okay, as you can see, we've got it narrowed down. You see the scratches, and that's what we're going to have to take out. I'm going to have to clean up some of the outside, and then we'll get going on it. Okay, if you can see, we're getting closer. It's not nearly as bad as it once was. And a few more passes on that wheel and I think we'll have it. There you have it. Now I got to shine it up a little bit. And there you go. So let's go over what we just did. We took out a graphite shaft for a ladies and installed a steel shaft into this. And we had to use a specific puller here so as not to damage the paint up in here. Then what we did is we got the shaft to go through, And these are typically 350. Well, it's really hard to find a 350 anything anymore. So we took a 370, cut some grooves in it to give it a room to compress, and then we put our tip pin in there. Then we ground it down, and then we did the polishing on it. Now there could be another step in there if you really use a different belt, and you can even go finer and then go to it, but 1200 grit's pretty fine. Then I used my my stitched buffing wheel, and I buffed out that. So now we have that, and we have that nice and clean, and we now have that nice and clean. Woo! That kind of thing. So all we have to do now is cut the length and put on a grip. So if you like what you saw, please subscribe. Please like the video. It's the old school reshaft, and I know some of you guys got some of those out there, so now you have it. If you're not confident with that, send it to me and we'll do the reshaft just like we did for this gentleman here. And let's see your scores go low.